Third and a long yard, and they're going to throw. Stafford complete. Calvin Johnson to the end zone, fumbles it, and it goes out of bounds. It'll be a touchback if he didn't break the plane.
They keep it on the ground. Chris Brown. No signal. Fumble.
And Jacksonville has it.
Goodness gracious, what a turn of events.
How long do you think it takes to become a super cool, confident Mike chucker like these guys, as opposed to the fumbling, nervous Nelly we saw a moment ago? I would say about 20 seconds prior to the interview would be all that it takes to become an expert passer of the mic. So let's have a look how they used to do it old style. Now they do the long ball, as it were, in some of the things. Here they got a pass off, but that all looked pretty normal. However, when you slow it down as I've done here and have another look at it, it looks like the microphone's on a string, and I think this is why there's such a difference between the old ones. It's the technology that's improved, not their skills at passing the mic, because let's face it, passing the mic is a pretty simple operation, unless of course it's on a string. So here we go. If we look at that, it looks like it gets pulled there, and it's not been pulled by the wire below, because the wire below is loose. I've zoomed in on it there, so it's harder to see if the wire below is, but it is loose. I've watched it, but let's just watch the handoff again. I've got this looped, so there she goes, and pulls towards him. So that is on a string. And that is why they don't always go for the long ball. They go for the handoff quite often sometimes, because they're just a bit worried about getting some pull or some swing, so it has to feel just right for them to go for the long ball, otherwise they hand it off. And just before the fanboys say it's the wire that's holding them back, there we have a throw down field on a wire, and that is at the end of the space shuttle era, just as they moved on to the ISS with new CGI technology they were breaking in that could be done live, proving my point that it's the technology that improves their performance on the mic. Okay, let's have a look at this one. This is in real speed. Something seems to get stuck there. For this type of investigation, I find it quite useful to keep the speed going, and then to, even when we're looking at it in close up, it's easier to have it controlled by the computer, or actually in this case YouTube. So this is at quarter speed, and these are much easier to pick up at quarter speed. The only useful thing is being able to zoom in on these. The difficulty I find if I try and control the speed is that it's hard you get jerky actions on account of my controlling the speed, so it's better to have the YouTube do it, which actually makes this very easy for people to search for. All we're going to do is slow down the speed at the microphone change, and you can have a look to see what it is, if there's anything looks a bit weird about it. If you find anything, you can send me a link with the timestamp and I can have a close-up on it, but that's how I've been finding these. So I think what's happening here is he's getting stuck on the string that's holding up the mic. It's hard to say 100% that that's definitely what it is, but there's something very strange goes on there. So just a very quick idea of what I think the microphone is. This is just me, it's a remote controller for the old video I had, tied together at the top there with this string so that it can still move around. So it'll be something similar to this, so that's me moving the string so that it can stand upright, and obviously they'll be using very thin thread, and this is me readjusting it so that it can move horizontally at pretty much any angle, but you can also move it around without it changing angle, and then I have a go in a minute at trying to move it whilst holding it in my hand and trying to get it to move, but it's very difficult to do on your own. That's just moving it on its own. So that would be the possibly on using a fishing rod to try and get the sort of the right tension on it, just off screen obviously, and here I stick my hand in and try and do a toss myself, but trying to do it with whilst controlling the top part, and the bottom part is really difficult. But so something similar to that. Obviously that's just a very cheap idea of what's going on. So here we have another example of a fumble. Now I do like using the American football terms for this. So we've got the handoff, which is when they generally just pass it between them. We've got the long ball, where they chuck it down the field type thing, and mostly they use the handoffs in the early days, whereas nowadays they're always using the long ball, or they do their fancy turns. Live weightlessness is no problem at all nowadays because they have the live augmented reality technology. However, the errors manifest in a different format, but they still do occur. Certain space actors seem more comfortable with throwing long. Some stick to the short pass and others stick to the handoff. Mostly it's a mixture, but some are more gutsy than others, the guy in blue being a case in point. I'm going to collate a few over the years towards the end, and there's this big gap at the beginning where there's hardly any interviews at all, and then around about mission 70 you get a lot more of the interviews, and I'm guessing they had figured it out by then how to do the fraud. I just want to cover what I think the wires are made of. The wires are very important in the interviews and sometimes are the only evidence of zero-G, certainly in the earlier days. They always seem to be making a thing out of the wire. It always seems to be getting in the way, but I don't think that's accidental. I think that is deliberate. It's an effect that they use rather than a difficulty they face. I think that they're under special. I've mentioned it in my series. The space shuttle was a zero-G plane. I think they're under special tension. So these are the old style sort of twist ties that you could get. So it's a cross between something like this. They do them covered in plastic. I don't know. I've put paper in here, but I don't know if they do them in. Yeah, but they do. You can get them in plastic now. But they're also, so it'd be something similar to that sort of tension with a combination of. So here it is in a long version. I might get some of this to mess around with, try and demonstrate what I mean. But combined with this as well. So this is a drain unblocker, like a plumber's mate type thing. And if anyone's ever used these, you know it's got a similar sort of tension. So they're designed to be able to twist around, but also keep tension on them when you're trying to push in a certain direction. So it's a cross between those two, and it may vary a bit. They would have had somebody specialise in, and imagine that, specialise in making them for them, and imagine that if it was covered in plastic would look quite similar to the sort of reactions you get, and maybe just slightly stiffer than that to keep the zero-G effect going. So combined that sort of principle of the coiled wire with the ability to hold in place like the old style paper ties that you could get. But that's how I think they do the wires. If you watch them, you can see, and I do think they varied them a bit depending on the angle. So whether they're shooting hanging upside down and all that kind of stuff, it would depend on what type of wire they would use. So yeah, that's how I think they did the wires. Sorry, just to add that they have these cables. These are showing them in different thicknesses here, but they also have this stiff end as well, which some of the mics you'll notice look a lot firmer towards where the mic is, and they use that as a trick. They use like their quick hand work to make it look like it's got elevation, and to control it and make it try to give the effect of weightlessness. So here he's looking at all the different ones. So a blend between the coiled wire shown here and the paper ties shown earlier covered in plastic. The wires in most scenes have a very peculiar tension for a microphone wire. Think about how a microphone wire would never keep angles even in 0G when you watch the Space Shuttle footage. So here they've got the mics attached to their ears, but it's with the general interviews that they do, they want to keep the costs down as much as possible. So they'll just do the mic on a thread, and that's why they're reluctant to do the long ball too often, because it might need extra work. Generally speaking, the threads will be thin enough for it not to even show up in the level of video quality that you see, but you do see them here. They're spinning around stuff, and I think this was on a thread, and they've gone in and added the extra detail for the spinning with CGI. So this is a big production for them at the time, and this would increase the costs, the production costs. And what they wanted was the standard interview with very little going on, and then they would do some more complex ones, but some of them were literally no budget at all, as it were, using the old school sort of props on a wire with no CGI added in. But then they would do bigger production ones, like I've seen ones where they've got a miniature of the space shuttle spinning around, and they seem to have no concerns about whether it's going to look wrong with the wire work. But that's because they know that it's going into post-production, where any errors would get edited out or CGI'd over, and possibly like with so where they got the mini space shuttle, it would be a smaller version in the live, and then they would have the bigger version on the post-production, which the smaller version for the live version would be done in Crapovision, and the post-production version, it would be any inconsistency would be altered. But that would come at a cost, and what they want to be able to do is get high production, the interviews with the schools. So although they've got certain amounts of interviews shown, they don't have a full record, but there would be a lot, and so they were doing a lot of interviews once they'd figured out how to do them, and they needed to keep them at a budget that worked. So this thing is, if you've seen the series, I think that's CGI'd in afterwards, although they would have had a prop on a string, perhaps not twisting around quite so much, but they would have had something so the people who were watching it could be going ooh ah, but they'd be watching in Crapovision. But anyway, so that's why the mic worked. They didn't want to fluff it up, because really they didn't want to have to get it into post-production. It's only if they were feeling confident on the mic that they had a good grip of it, they could do the long ball. If not, they're quite happy to do the handoff. I hope that kind of makes sense. Okay, so no points for guessing what team these guys are batting for with their black and white checkers. That should be fairly obvious. Now, this interview, the whole thing was done in handoff style, but I just want to close in on a couple of good examples from this. So here, I think he's trying to make it look a bit weightless, and yet it's just fast hand movements. This is in real time, so you think, oh, was that a bit of weightlessness? I mean, now that I've said it, you probably weren't thinking it at all, but if we just, but it's not, it's just if we just zoom in very quickly there, just to show, I think these guys were trying to say, it's like, why not just pass the thing back anyway? So notice the fast hand maneuvers there. And then there's a good example of the swing effect. I'm not sure if it's here. Let me just stop this. Yep, so here it is. I'll just play this in real speed, and this is the stiffened end of the drain rod, drain unblocker, the wired drain unblocker. If you watch this maneuver, so he passes it off here, and then he just grips the end and tries to make it look like weightlessness, but he's actually just holding below the yeah, it's just a really cheap trick. And then this is my favourite one. Hold on. So just for a moment, I thought I saw some weightlessness here when I originally first was watching this, and so I zoomed in on it to get a closer look. There you go, a bit of weightlessness there. But when you zoom in on this, it's again, it's just a fluffed handoff. It's, you know, it's a fumble. It is a fumble. So let's have a look at this. So he comes in to do the handoff. Everyone gets a bit confused as to who's going to take it. So he takes it by the top there. Doesn't quite secure it. Just about got a hold of it, but then it starts. I think he missed his. So this guy missed the handoff there. Fumble, and then this guy here comes in with his hand down there to save it from falling down the back. It's probably on a wire for security, but you'll see his hand comes up here and just nudges it up, and really just saves it, just stops it from falling down. So that's heading down the back there, but it looks like, it just looked like a bit of weightlessness, and that's probably why they left it in here. It looks, oh yeah, look, it's weightless, it's coming up, but no, it's the hand. He's sneaking his hand here, and this other guy comes in and grabs it and passes it round. And this is, you know, it's just all this sneakiness, and look, there's his hand still there. So let's just watch that in real time on the close up. It's funny, you know, there's some of the missions get to be quite special for you when you start investigating them, and this is one for me. I remember seeing this on the site. They had like a freeze frame of this as the link, and I was just looking at it thinking, oh my goodness, that is just so obviously green screen or blue screen, and I just watching this, I can't believe that people actually think that this is anything other than a green screen production. I just don't understand why they think it is. So yeah, I just thought I'd mention that because I just want to focus on one of the videos from this STS-94 is, but this was inspirational for me. This was where I just thought, I cannot let this stand anymore. I've got to get to grips with what on earth is going on, because if you think for one moment that this is reality, it's just not fair on humanity. Okay, so notice how the guy's hanging exactly upside down to the vertical. That's so common. They never stray offline there. And I just want to show you the whole maneuver here. I mean, it's just another fumble, and obviously not every handoff is going to be like this. And see her hand swinging around there to avoid the area of the strings, and something that I was tempted to call cupping going on, where her hand comes up and it's just cupped up like that. It's just an awkward sort of maneuver to try and avoid the strings, and it's not the first one I've seen like that. I might show a couple more a bit later, but there she goes around the edge. Now, you know, I'm sure that the fanboys will have nothing wrong with that, and then that Mike just stays there to the end of the interview, hanging on the string. But let's watch that again. So he passes it off to her, she goes to take it, a little bit of awkwardness, possibly got caught on a string, but it's, I mean, to me it's just so obvious. It's you know, that is string work. Now I know this is magic on the mic, but I just want to chuck this one in there since we touched on green screen, blue screen projections. Here's another one, and he grabs this little paper airplane, and will he throw it behind him? for a great example of a paper airplane in 0G, or will he throw it forward? Let's have a look. Oh, there you go. Okay, so this is magic on the mic, and this is another trick that needs to, well, another error that needs to be exposed. It's people have mentioned it loads of times, other flat Earth community people and people that get into the NASA stuff, but it's the delay on the microphone. I saw a clip recently that said it was a I can't remember if it's 4 or 6 second delay between the Earth and the space shuttle. Now, I didn't save that clip. If I find it again, I will put it on another video. But it's generally accepted that there is a delay, and in the natural course of conversation, people they forget about this in the interviews that they do. They generally start the interview remembering the delay, and as it gets further in, they forget about it. They must have someone there reminding them, because they do get reminded. Now I'm having to play this on this screen because I want to have the timing in there as well. So let's just play that at full speed. Oh, I've got it on quarter speed already.
Spectacular.
Bill Harwood with CBS News for Winston Scott, I think, or Leroy Chaff. Based on your...
Right, okay, so he says Winston Scott and Leroy Chaff, I think it was. So let's just go back and watch that at quarter speed, keeping the timings up there, so we can see how long it takes him to respond.
Bill Harwood with CBS News for Winston.
Okay, so just as he's starting to say Winston Scott, it's 9:02.
Scott,
so Winston Scott is finished on 9:03. Watch his reaction.
Leroy.
So he starts to react on 9:04. So from the beginning of Winston Scott was 9:02, the finish of Winston Scott was 9:03, and he's reacting a second later. I'll just play that again so that you can see for yourself.
Bill Harwood with CBS News for Winston Scott, I think, or Leroy Chow.
Magic on the mic indeed. So wrapping things up now, this is STS-75 where they go wireless for the performance. That's in 1996. I was wondering if the wirelessness might be an issue in the shuttle, because this is the only one that I've come across that's wireless. I thought perhaps it would affect the electronics, but clearly not, because they are wireless here. So I think that's just emphasises the point that the wire itself was an important part of the show. It was easier for them to do the wire and to add to the weightlessness effect than it was to pass the microphone around, because of the risk of swinging and just general errors. So this is Dilly Gill signing off for now. I just want to leave you with a collection of handoffs, throws and long balls, so that you can just see them all grouped together. Most of them succeed, you know, that's the thing. But yeah, I just thought you'd like to see this.